Creature Campers. Surprise under the stars. Oliver had been right. By following the trail of moss, the campers soon found themselves in a small clearing. In the middle of the clearing was a large, flat, oval stone. It was carefully balanced on a smaller, round stone. "This must be the stone tablet that Grumplestick was talking about," said Norm. "Look," said Wisp, "there's something on top of it." Sure enough, a rolled-up map lay on top of the table. Norm carefully plucked it off the stone. "Whee!" Hazel said, thumping and scampering around the clearing. "We won! We won! We won!" "Hazel," said Wisp. Hazel stopped leaping and bounding. "Wisp," she said. "We still have to make it to 2 more checkpoints." "Oh, yeah," Hazel said. She leaned in to look at the map. "Wee," she whispered. Norm unrolled the map, and a small note fell out and fluttered to the grass. Oliver picked it up. It read, "Congratulations, Creature Campers. You have completed the first part of the quest. Now follow the map to the second checkpoint. Hurry up, I'm getting awfully hungry, and it's just me and Xena and all this food." Norm spread the map out so everyone could see it. There was a purplish smudge on the paper that he thought looked awfully similar to the berries in berry casserole. "No," Norm shouted. "No, no, no!" "What?" Oliver asked. "What's the problem?" "Don't you see it?" Norm asked. He jabbed his big finger at the map. "The X?" Wisp asked. The map showed the stone table, and there was also a great big X where the compass should be. In between, there were a whole bunch of footprints set out in anything but a straight line. Each different direction had a number to go along with it. "No," Norm said, "that's smudge. They're already eating the berry casserole." "We'd better hurry," said Hazel, "before it's all gone." "Now you're making sense," said Norm. "All we have to do is follow these dance moves," said Hazel, pointing to the footprints on the map. "Those aren't dance moves," said Oliver. "They are the number of paces." "But whose paces?" Norm asked. "There's only one way to find out," said Wisp. "We'll start with the first set. Everyone walk 33 paces east and see where that takes you." Norm, Oliver, Wisp, and Hazel all lined up at the stone table, facing north, and then turned to their right. "Okay," said Norm. "We're facing east now. 33 paces. Go." "Whee!" said Hazel, tearing off through the underbrush and disappearing into the forest. Norm, Oliver, and Wisp all looked at one another. "She'll be back," said Wisp. Norm strode forward, counting his paces. Let's pause here. And our strategy is who and what. So when you're working with that strategy, you read for a little while, then you stop, and then you think about who. Who is the main character in what I've read so far? Well, I wouldn't think it's one character. I think there are several characters. I think the main characters are Norm, Oliver, Wisp, and Hazel. And now we need to think about what. What did they do? Well, they were at a stone table. They found a map, and they decided that they're going to follow the map because something delicious awaits them at the end of the map when they reach their destination. Let's continue. He reached 27 and stopped when he came to the edge of a very tall waterfall. His strides were too long. "That is a long way down," he said. Wisp counted a full 33 paces, but he didn't make it out of the clearing. His strides were too short. Oliver's 33 steps took him out of the clearing. When he stopped, he noticed a set of long footprints that looked like they belonged to Xena. "Hey, guys," said Oliver, "I think I'm on the trail." "Whee!" Hazel came tearing back. "I saw a moose and a deer and a squirrel and a crow and a bear. I think I saw a bear. I might have seen a bear. It might have been a shadow, though I was moving very fast." "Hazel," said Oliver, "let's just stick together." Norm and Wisp joined Oliver and Hazel. Norm held up the map. 17 paces north, he said. Oliver turned to his right. That was north. He counted off 17 paces. 20 paces east. He turned right again and walked 20 paces east. They continued this way through the woods, with Norm reading off directions and Oliver counting off paces. North, then south, then west, then south, then east, until finally they reached a small pond. "This looks like the place," said Norm. He pointed at the pond on the map. An old weeping willow tree sat at the edge of the pond, its branches dipping into the water. The water was green and covered with lily pads, and in the middle of the pond there was an old log, and on the old log there was a frog, a great big green bullfrog. "Ribbit," said the frog, watching them from its spot on the log. Tied to the back of the frog was the very thing the creature campers needed, a compass. Getting the compass off the back of the bullfrog turned out to be very, very hard. Norm reached out as far as he could, but even with his very long arms, he could not quite reach the frog. The bullfrog sat on its log, watching him. Ribbit. Oliver ran around to the other side of the pond. He made loud noises to try and startle the bullfrog into moving, but the noises didn't bother the bullfrog at all. Ribbit. Wisp held his breath and squeezed his eyes shut and fluttered his wings as hard as he could. He lifted a few inches off the ground and fluttered over the pond, over the lily pads, and almost to the log. But when he opened his eyes to see how far he'd gone, he got very excited. He stopped holding his breath and yelled, "I'm doing it! I'm flying over the water!" Unfortunately, the minute Wisp stopped holding his breath, he also stopped moving his wings. And the minute he stopped moving his wings, he stopped flying. He fell into the pond with a great big curse blunk. Ribbit! The bullfrog leapt from the log onto Wisp's head and then onto a lily pad. Norm held on to the weeping willow's branches and leaned out as far as he could. His fingers were almost at the bullfrog when the branch broke. Norm flailed his arms. He tried to catch himself. He reached for anything he could find, but there was nothing to grab but air. Norm landed heavily in the murky water with a gigantic splash. Ribbit! The bullfrog leapt to the marshy land at the edge of the pond. "Gotcha," said Oliver. He reached down with both hands to grab the bullfrog, but his feet got stuck in the mud and the bullfrog leapt up between his outstretched fingers. All Oliver grabbed was a big wet handful of oozing mud. Ribbit! Ribbit! The bullfrog hopped away from the pond with the compass still tied to its back. Norm buried his giant head in his giant hands. "We're doomed. We'll never catch that frog. We'll never get the compass. We'll never get that berry casserole." "Hazel to the rescue," Hazel said. Hazel stood face to face with the bullfrog. Whatever it did, she did the opposite. When it hopped left, Hazel ran right. When it hopped right, Hazel ran left. Left, right, right, left. No matter how high or how far it hopped, Hazel was right there. "Whee!" she said. Finally, the bullfrog stopped jumping and croaked, "Ribbit!" Hazel scooped it up. "Sorry to bother you, Mr. Bullfrog," she said. She untied the compass from its back. "Thank you, Mr. Bullfrog," she said. The bullfrog leapt from Hazel's hands into Oliver's shoulder, then onto Norm's knee, then onto Wisp's head, and finally back onto its log. Ribbit! "That was a fun game, guys, don't you think?" said Hazel. Wisp, Oliver, and Norm did not think it had been fun. In fact, they thought it had been anything but fun. "We don't have time for games," Norm grumbled. His stomach grumbled with him. "We need to go north, and we need—" "Berry casserole," Wisp mumbled. "Let's pause, and let's think about the who. Again, we have all those characters, but I think in the last couple pages, the most important character was Hazel. And what did she do? Well, that Hazel was successful in catching the bullfrog and getting the much-needed compass off its back. Way to go, Hazel. Meanwhile, Barnaby Snoop had just finished putting the final touches on his trap. It consisted of one red and white checkered picnic blanket with a berry casserole in the middle of it, one large metal cage hanging above the red and white checkered picnic blanket, one gigantic electromagnet. "And now," said Barnaby Snoop, watching the creature campers through his spyglass, "I'll simply wait for you to use your compass. When I want you to come my way, I'll just turn up the power on my magnet. I will control where your compass points, and mark my words, it will point right into my trap." Barnaby's stomach growled. The berry casserole smelled very good. Perhaps, he thought, I'll have just a little, one small piece, a sliver of berry casserole, nothing more than a bite. All right, let's pause here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I think our main character is Barnaby Snoop. And what did he do? I think he set a trap for our other character friends. Let's read to find out what happens next. There was a note on the back of the compass. Hazel read it while Norm, Oliver, and Wisp wiped the mud and pond gunk off of themselves. "Ugh, you guys stink," Hazel said. Okay, all we have to do is use the compass to go 1 degree northeast. That's it? Asked Norm. That's it, said Hazel. That's what this note says. 1 degree northeast will bring you to our picnic feast. Well, what are we waiting for? Oliver asked. Norm's stomach rumbled. Picnic feast, he groaned. Berry casserole. We better hurry, or Grumplestick will eat it all, said Wisp. Hazel held the compass until the needle pointed north. There's magnetic north, she said. So we need to go. She turned the compass until the needle rested on 1 degree. This way. Norm, Wisp, and Oliver followed Hazel as she bounced along, following the compass. The sun was shining and the forest was alive with chattering chipmunks and scampering squirrels. It was almost noon. Hey guys, a camp song? Want to sing? Who knows a good camp song? Maybe we know, Norm, Wisp, and Oliver said all at the same time. Geez, mumbled Hazel, fall in a pond and you become grumpy pants. Meanwhile, what was intended to be only one slice of berry casserole, one small sliver, turned out to be the entire thing. Barnaby Snoop's buttons were ready to pop. He had purple berry stains in his mustache and beard. Suddenly he realized that he'd been so busy eating casserole that he'd forgotten to watch where the campers were going. He quickly raised his spyglass to one eye. He spotted them, but they were going the wrong way. They were headed away from him. That won't do, Barnaby said. He rushed to his giant electromagnet. He wrapped his fingers around the power level. Just a little bit of power should do it, he said. He pulled the lever. Hazel stopped moving. The compass needle wobbled. It turned right, then left, then right again. I think we have to go a little more this way, said Hazel. She pointed toward her right. Meanwhile, Barnaby Snoop watched the campers move farther away from his trap. That can't be, he said. He turned up the power even more. This time the creature campers turned back in his direction. They took a few steps, stopped, and looked at their compass. Then they turned away again, going in the opposite direction. What is the meaning of this? Barnaby shouted. Hazel tapped the compass. 1 minute, the needle was pointed to her right. The next minute, it spun in a complete circle and then pointed to her left. She kept trying to head 1 degree northeast, but she had to stop and adjust every few seconds. They were going in a zigzag through the woods. I think it's broken, she said. Maybe it got wet, said Oliver. Who would tie a compass to a bullfrog? Asked Wisp. Grumplestick, said Norm. He's probably eating all the berry casserole right now. But Furl Grumplestick was not eating all of the berry casserole. In fact, he was eating none of the berry casserole. Instead, he and Xenomorph were enjoying a nice spread of cheeses and discussing the current value of leprechaun gold and whether or not unicorns could use their horns to roast hot dogs over a fire. Meanwhile, Barnaby Snoop saw what the problem was. The campers were getting closer to the meteorite that had fallen from the sky. The meteorite was really a strong magnet, so strong that it was interfering with the camper's compass. There's a simple solution, Barnaby, he said to himself. I'll just make my magnet more powerful than the meteorite. And that's what he did. Hazel watched the needle spin and spin and spin until it finally pegged dead to her left. She held the compass in front of her and hopped toward the place where Barnaby Snoop and his trap was waiting. Oliver, Wisp, and Norm looked at each other and then followed Hazel. And that's the end. Now, boys and girls, if you like this book and you want to find out what happens next, or maybe what had happened before this book and some of the other books, I encourage you to go to Epic, because that is where I found this book. I think I'm going to read the next one too. Have a good day.